Good evening and welcome to Business Today on Channel I. On this program, we talk about business and many insightful topics with high-profile individuals. On today's episode, we're going to discuss about the economic situation in Greece and in Sri Lanka. And for that, we have with us Professor Glavinis, the Dean from the Faculty of Law, Aristotle University of Thessaloniki in Greece, as well as Engineer Rohan Senaviratne, the Additional General Manager, Ceylon Electricity Board, and the former chairman of IET Sri Lanka Network. Good evening and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, now before we dive into the topic, Professor, I'd like to start off by asking you what made you come to Sri Lanka right now, and tell us a bit about this.
I'm very deeply honored to be invited to the high-level conference which took place today in Colombo and to discuss potential ways of going out from this crisis. Sri Lanka today faces an acute crisis which is unique in its history. Same thing that Greece faced a similar crisis 10 years ago, not far from today. We may not say that we are totally out of the crisis, the very deep and internationally known debt crisis which occurred in 2010, 2 years after the big financial crisis. And we have been through roughly the same things that you will have to face as a nation, you will have to face as economy, and as a market, and especially as society. And I am very much honored that you invited me here today to discuss, to contribute through my experience. I am a professor of international economic law, and in this capacity in 2011 I was called by the then Prime Minister Loukas Papadimos to act as his legal counsel for the restructuring of the debt and the preparation of the second adjustment program for Greece, actually. And with this experience, I would like to share it with you and with your audience.
All right, thank you so much for being with us today, Professor. And Mr. Rohan, I believe that the Institution of Engineering and Technology was responsible for organizing this conference.
Yeah, first of all, let me extend my sincere thanks to Rupavahini for inviting us for this particular business program, the Business Today. And as you said, yes, the Institution of Engineering and Technology is organizing an international conference, namely the Roadmap for Economic Recovery of Sri Lanka, which will be held in Galadari Hotel with the participation of well-renowned expert resource persons. So we, the Institution of Engineering and Technology, decided to invite Professor from Greece to Professor Panayotis from Greece to talk in one of the sessions, especially to share his experience in how the Greece after economic crisis in 2009 recovered, and to share his experience with us. Great. So if I just elaborate, Institution of Engineering and Technology, it is one of the largest institutions in the world of membership of about 155,000 spread over 148 countries, and it provides a lot of support for engineering community and the technological community to build up their capacities. They are advising governments all over the world, and they are producing a lot of technological books and the magazines, and to enhance the engineering knowledge of the engineers and the technologists. So we, Sri Lanka Network of the IET, the Institution of Engineering and Technology, established in 1935. Okay. So a long time ago, and we have about 1,000 members now, all are engineers. And then our Institution of Engineering and Technology every year organize an international conference on a very important and current theme. So this year we decided that we should organize this particular conference on the theme of economic recovery of Sri Lanka.
Great.
And there is an array of expert panelists which will discuss their experience and to provide assistance to build a roadmap of recovery of Sri Lankan economy.
All right, thank you. Now, Professor, diving into today's topic, just give us an introduction about the economic situation in Greece. What do you think provoked it, and where you started and where you are right now?
It has been more than 10 years ago, as I said in the beginning. We were totally unprepared to face such a situation. Actually, we were cut off from the markets. You know, a state, especially a developed state, member of the European Union, is to tap the markets, to borrow money from the markets, from the capital markets, and therefore has to be able to preserve its credit worthiness. In case the markets fear that the state may not anymore risks not to pay back its debt, then you're cut off from the markets, and then suddenly the sky is on your head, on the head of your people, and you try to find ways to refinance your debt. And in this case, you have to do with international institutions to which you belong, which request from you a program that you have to compile in order to be able to regain your credit worthiness. That's roughly the scenario that you will face yourselves, that we faced more than 10 years ago. It was in the aftermath of the financial crisis, and we paid the cost actually of the financial crisis, although the causes were much deeper than what was the events of the financial crisis at the moment.
All right, and what are your plans of recovery for the situation that you're currently in?
Well, firstly, and here we have a common element. We have much in common with Sri Lanka, as a matter of fact. It is the debt, actually, public debt. In Greece, we have accumulated debt since 1820s, the War of Independence, where we borrowed money in order to conduct the War of Independence. And somehow it is in the DNA of the Greek state, which was born with debt. And then we practically never got out from the debt trap throughout our 200 years of history. We celebrated last year the Bicentennial, 200 years of Greek independence. In the 80s, when Greece joined the European Economic Community at the time, today the European Union, largely we were unprepared as economy and as a market to compete with highly competitive Northern European states, markets and industries. This means that when you want to join a common market, to join a free trade zone, a customs union, you need to prepare your industry to face increased conditions of competition. Otherwise, you will pay a very high price if you open up your frontiers and you're not prepared for this. So we did this, and it coincided with a socialist government coming to power in 1981, which doubled overnight the salaries of the workers, of the labor, and produced an earthquake in the competitiveness of the already uncompetitive industries in Greece, in an environment of open frontiers. Therefore, the Greek people who had access now to more money due to the salary, to increased salaries, borrowing power actually, what they did is that they bought foreign products which were coming to Greece tax-free and quota-free now. And Greek products, they could not compete. And therefore, within 4 years, in 1984, Greece at the time faced a very acute foreign exchange reserves crisis. We barely had $400 million in our central bank due to the deficit in our external trade. Because we joined the European Union unprepared, actually. And since then, we apply austerity measures, one program after another. In the 90s, we were obliged to apply discipline in order to bring the debt, which had already exceeded 100% of our GDP. We had to meet the Maastricht criteria in order to join the Eurozone, which was the objective at the time of the European Union. And then we had to bring the debt down to as close as possible to 60%. And we joined the Euro in 2002, together with 12 others, 11 others, European countries. But then it was much more easy for Greece to tap the markets and to borrow low-cost money, to issue bonds and to finance the deficit in the central government. And that is what caused actually the over-indebtedness in situation in Greece. And within 8 years, in 2009, 2010, we practically defaulted on our debt. Just because we had easy access as a member of the Eurozone, we had very easy access to borrowing money from the capital markets. And you know, when the capital markets borrow money to you, lend money to you, once they fear that you will not be able to pay back their money, actually, then they start, the spread of your bonds starts to increase, and then the rating companies, they downgrade your credit worthiness, and then you're cut off from the market. This happened in 2010, in May 2010, when Greece had to launch another auction for collecting as many as 12 billion euros in order to refinance a bond loan which was coming to a term at the moment, and it was not possible because the markets were lending us money at very high interest, and because of this, the debt, our debt, would not be sustainable anymore. Therefore, we had to find other solutions, we had to find other sources to finance our debt, to refinance our debt, to service our debt.
Right. Now, when we talk about the current economic situation in Greece, how do you think it compares to the tragic situation that you were mentioning before? Do you think that you have come a lot far, or do you think that you could have done better? What is your opinion on this?
Certainly we could have done much better than we did, because it took us 3 adjustment programs in order to be able to regain access to the markets. And something which is not quite completed until today, but we are back to the markets, and that's the objective number 1 of any adjustment program, is to be able to make your debt sustainable and to be able to bring you back to the markets in order to borrow money from the markets at sustainable interest. In the beginning, we had to convince the European Union, this was in 2010, to borrow money to a member state of the Eurozone. And there is a no bailout clause, as we call it, in the treaties, which prohibited the other states to borrow money to another state, to another member state. So we had to overcome this legal constraint and convince the financially strong nations that they needed to provide, together with an economic program, cheap money. That was what was needed at the time. Measures alone were not enough. Okay? We were invited to adopt measures, strict austerity measures, but measures alone, once you were cut off from the markets, were not enough. The European Union did not decide, the decision in the European Union is a particular process. And this, thanks to the Americans at the time, Obama administration, which convinced the Europeans in April 2010 that they needed to put a big package on the table. The initial program, funded by the Eurozone member states, not the European Union, and the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, was of 110 million euros, 110 billion euros, to see the figures actually, and to compare with the mere 2.9 billion that I have read that you were about to request today from the International Monetary Fund. What was important at the time, and this is something where our cases are different, is that Greece was part of a free market zone. Greece was part of a monetary union, okay? And therefore Greece was risking the viability of the euro itself. Okay? Therefore, there was a crisis which was not just Greek. Of course, the beginning of the crisis was in Greece, but it was a crisis which had to do with the architecture of the Eurozone as a whole. It is something which everybody knows. If you create a monetary union, then the more competitive countries of this union actually benefit in terms of competitiveness compared to the less competitive and less prosperous states of the union. And in this particular case, actually, all the southern European states, namely Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Ireland, they faced the same problems. Greece was just the first in this series of states which followed then, and they had to be funded also by extraordinary mechanisms for financing set up by the European Union and the IMF also. Therefore, this is something quite different, because Europe at the time, in order to preserve the force and the existence of the euro, actually, then provided the safety net to Greece, and the second program, once the first failed actually because it did not provide for a haircut in our debt. At the time, the assumption was that Greece needed to pay back the entire debt actually. Very soon they realized that a second program was needed, which was designed in October, from October 2011 until February 2012. And the second program provided for a haircut of 53%, as much as 53% of the nominal value of the debt owed to private bondholders, actually. Therefore, the European institutions borrowed money to Greece in order to be able to implement this substantial haircut, and then to be able to recover. This is something that you do not have to the same degree that we had at the time. What was good and at the same time bad for Greece is that we belonged to a union which was not designed as it should have been in the beginning, but at the same time we were supported as no other nation in modern history. And this was a systemic issue. The IMF actually put the pressure on the European Union to put the money on the table for the second program and to apply for a haircut, because in 2010 already, it is 1 year after 2009. 2009 was 1 year after 2008, where the financial crisis occurred. And it was only in 2007, 2008 that the world went to the recession. In 2010, the world went back to the growth, substantial growth of more than 9-10%, huge growth, you know. It was a rebound, it was a V, you know. It was a rebound of the global economy. Now, imagine at the time, 2010, when the world went out from the recession, 1 year, and then to growth, to go against down, to make a W, you know, to make a W, and go against down to a deeper crisis. And this time it would not be a mere financial crisis, it will be a global fiscal crisis. So this they wanted to avoid. This is why they put the big package on the table. Just because the bonds, sovereign bonds of Greece were negotiated in the same market as other sovereign bonds of developed nations. Okay? Therefore, this is why Greece benefited from such a support. In the meantime, when we were implementing and we were close to going out from the program in 2015, we changed the government. We had new elections, and we decided, as people, I mean, to completely change the policy vis-à-vis our partners, European partners and the IMF. It was more or less like a revolution at the end of the program, which we paid actually in order to learn this political lesson. Okay? We paid as much as it cost us as much as 100 billion euros, because we had to enter into a new program. And we were not able, at the end of this new program, in 2018 to go back entirely to the markets. Partially, now we are back to the markets, although our bonds, our sovereign bonds, do not have an investment grade yet. Okay? Although Greece has substantially recovered ever since. That's the story in a few words. It's not easy actually to describe a decade in a few words, but the lesson to draw is that what is very important, critical importance is the political unity in the country. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody should stop the blame game. I mean, you are responsible for the crisis. No, you are responsible for the crisis, you know. And put together a viable program in order to be able to obtain the restructuring of the debt and to be able to go back to the markets to be funded as any other state on sustainable terms.
So it's very important to take ownership. Is that what you're saying, right? You should take ownership and not pass the blame to others.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. You should not expect from the international institutions and the lenders to impose an economic program to you, actually, to us, to every country which finds itself in the same situation. You should be able to put together a viable program which demonstrates how the country will be able to pay back its debt following the restructuring that it will propose. Correct. It's negotiations. You have to negotiate with these people, actually, people who have borrowed money to you, and they may understand that you are in a difficulty, actually, to entirely pay their money back, to get their money back. But at the end of the day, they will ask you, provided that we agree on what you propose. Okay? Tell us how you will be able to pay back the loan under the new terms that we will agree through this negotiation. Mm-hmm. This is something that you need to do, no matter how you protest and the blame game that inevitably you will do, actually, you will go through. You have, at the end of the day, to put together a viable program to present it to the lenders in order to support your proposal for a partial write-off of the debt and for the restructuring and for the rescheduling of the payments of the debt. That's inevitable, and that's something that you need to do. And if you do not do this today or tomorrow, one day or another you will have to do it. Okay?
That's very correct. Now, based on research and what the professor just spoke about, we can see that there are some similarities between the situation in Greece and in Sri Lanka. So what do you think about how Sri Lanka compares to what happened in Greece?
I think, as Professor very well explained, there are similarities and there are differences as well. So I think the similarities, he will explain that how the crisis initiated, mm-hmm. how they could not borrow money from the markets, and the inflationary pressures and disunity among the political system, and the pressures came from EU and so many other things he explained.
Correct.
But the Sri Lanka is an isolated country, and it's not like a union. Mm-hmm. So in the case of Greece, it is in a union, so that it has advantages and disadvantages as well. But we are standalone, a different country, standalone country. So our conditions are little different to the conditions in Greece.
Right.
But the outcomes are same. What our people are facing now may have faced by the Greece people also at the same time. So what we have to think is, as he said, how to come out from this crisis without having any blame game, have to have the unity among the people, unity among the society, unity among the political parties, and unity is very well needed to come out with this situation, I believe, because then only we can have a common program put into the society and get the consensus from everybody, and then to go ahead with this particular program. So that is the challenge, and because this program will not be easy, because this is a tough program that we are going to get, because if we want to come out with this economic situation, we have to face challenges.
Right.
Without challenges, we cannot come out with this. So when we face challenges, if we don't have the unity among the society and among the political system in the country, it will be very difficult to go ahead with these proposed agendas.
Correct.
So that is why I think we have to do this exercise from various fronts, not one front, because IMF program may be only one solution. So there has to be many other solutions, like debt restructuring is another solution. So we have to have innovative mechanisms for debt restructuring, perhaps like asset monetization systems and various other systems, innovative systems. We may have to think for debt restructuring without just haircuts. We may not get the haircuts.
Right.
So we have to be innovative on debt restructuring. I think that is one of the biggest challenges in this process. So IMF process also will give some assistance for the balance of payment and so on, but that is not the only one. Even to get the support from the IMF, we have to comply to various other externalities.
Right.
So especially the restructuring of the systems, the restructuring of state-owned enterprises, and the restructuring of how we are doing business in the country. So I think those are very essential for this particular program. So when we do this exercise, I think we have to get the assistance from everybody, and to see how we can get more dollars to the country. So how we can enhance the exports, because exports are very essential. Professor was also referring what happened to the export. So we had the export economy, and then we slowly moved to an import economy. So we were importing everything to the country, even the things that we can produce in the country, we were importing. So we should not think like that. We should try to be an export-oriented country. Then only we can get a lot of foreign exchange to the country. Also, the country should not be run on subsidies, because if you look at the state-owned enterprises, so they were running on subsidies actually. The subsidy culture, I don't think if we go along with the subsidies, we can come out from this crisis. We have to really face the actual cost of commodities. Like for instance, now we pay the actual cost for petrol, diesel and so on. But still we are not paying the actual cost for various other things, water, electricity and so on. But those are hard. It's difficult for the society. But still we have to face that situation, and we have to be cost reflective, because otherwise there is no money in the government to subsidize. So we have to be self-standing. All organizations and all businesses should be self-standing without the support from the treasury or support from other organizations. Those needs a lot of structural changes. So that is the challenge. So challenge is to come with a nice program and to implement. So implementation is the task. You can come with a program, but if you cannot implement it within a short period of time, then it's really challenging. So I think what we should do is we should come out with a roadmap, clear roadmap to recover from this economic crisis. Then when we come out with the roadmap, we have to have enough discussions with everybody, the IMF, then the lending agencies, then the bilateral agencies, multilateral agencies, and then the experts on debt restructuring. Then we have to have bilateral talks with the other countries for debt restructuring, and so many things. Then the structural reforms, how we are going to do the structural reforms, and we have to put everything together and then prepare a roadmap, roadmap for the recovery process. Then in the roadmap, we should implement one by one. In the roadmap, it should be clearly spelled that this should be done in this time, this should be done in this time, and so on. So that is the challenge. Challenge is to implement the roadmap. So once we finalize the roadmap, I think everybody should get together. That is why Professor was telling we should not have any blame game here. So everybody has to get together. The society and the political system and the administration system, executive and the parliament, everybody.
You have to work out a consensus.
So
a consensus of the society, the economy, the market, and the political world.
Then only we can implement. Then we get the support. And also, I think what we are going to do also, I think better we inform, enlighten the society also what is our roadmap. Because if we enlighten the society that we will face these difficult times, this is our program, this is the roadmap for economic recovery in Sri Lanka. Perhaps it will take a couple of years or many years. So it's still okay, provided that you give that message to the public, message to the society, so that you get it. And then the public and the society will be ready to face that situation. And they're ready to go for a few years in difficult situation, and then they see a horizon where they can come out from this difficult situation. So I think this is a very complex situation where we are, but we have to have a very, very good roadmap. So that is the most important thing. In our conference, what we are going to discuss is about the roadmap for economic recovery of Sri Lanka.
Okay.
In the conference also, we are touch upon all these important areas like IMF program, then the debt restructuring, then assistance from bilateral and multilateral agencies, and then about the structural changes. Then we get advice from like Professor Panayotis and how they did it in Greece and some other countries as well. And then we put everything together and create a good discussion, and then write down a recovery process roadmap, and then to implement it with great challenges.
All right.
If I may answer the same question, what are the common issues between Greece and Sri Lanka? First, we both defaulted on our debt. That's the big common issue, actually. Then we do have both countries a big public sector. We have a big public sector, and we call it in Greece the big patient. Okay, what we have to treat and to cure, actually. That's the idea. Then we both lost competitiveness because we were transformed from exporting countries to importing countries, actually. Something very much in common, which do not have many nations. We used to have all these times, actually, and all these years, increased defense spending. Increased defense spending.
Right.
Greece and Sri Lanka. And we have something in common as to the consequences, political repercussions, very severe political repercussions in Greece, actually. And brain drain. Be careful with this. We lost, as a country, as an economy, as many as 500,000 young people who immigrated during the crisis. We are a population of 11 million, imagine. But we are in the periphery, not in the middle, but we are in the periphery again of a union. So people are coming back now, okay? But you are in the middle of the ocean. You do not have the luxury to lose, actually, young people who are talented and competent. And you have, this is something very critical, no matter what, actually, to create business opportunities for them in order to stay in the island. Otherwise, you will remain with the old ones and with the people who cannot revolutionize the economy, but this is what you need. And if you lose young people, actually, then it will be much more difficult to recover. Okay?
Yes.
That's vital. And definitively, you have to put this in the center of your program, how you will be able to affect the least the young people, actually, who very well educated come out to the
already started,
labor
Professor.
market.
It has already started. The brain drain is now happening. I know so many young engineers working in our institution as well as in other institutions. They are applying for immigration or the migration to various countries, and they get good job opportunities. very good job opportunities, but there are plenty of job opportunities in the world now these days. So they get good salaries, good opportunities. So one by one, the cream, the best people are leaving in this country. So as Professor said, I think we have to do something to retain them in this country, because if we lose the good human capital, it's very, very difficult in time to recover from this process. So I think, as Professor said, in the roadmap, I think we have to include a special area, how to retain this qualified, talented young people in this country.
Great. Now, thank you so much for being with us on this program and sharing your knowledge about the economic situation in Greece and in Sri Lanka and what we can do to really come out of this crisis. That was Professor Glavinis, the Dean from the Faculty of Law, Aristotle University of Thessaloniki in Greece, as well as Engineer Rohan Seneviratne, the Additional General Manager from the Ceylon Electricity Board, and as well as the former Chairman of IET, the Institution of Engineering and Technology Sri Lanka Network. Thank you again for being with us this evening and sharing your valuable knowledge.
Thank you very much for inviting us for this discussion. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
It's
the pleasure and the honor was all mine.
Thank you, sir. And that winds up today's episode of Business Today. Do join us next time as well. Till then, have a good night.